Hola, bom dia, Carl Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal live stream, the YouTube channel and the podcast. Over 16,000 downloads now on the podcast. Thanks. A special shout out to you podcast listeners who I don't get to interact with really. I think you're the secret squirrels of this mix, and you listen to the podcast wherever you are in the world. And I just want to say hello to you right now in your ears as you're listening to the playback of the podcast. And thank you very much for being one of those people who consumes our endeavor in that way. Also, yeah, everybody who watches via YouTube as well, hello to you this morning. Hi, waving to you from the YouTube video screen. Please subscribe if you haven't done already. That helps us a great deal. Move towards our magical figure of 1,000 subscribers, which helps us with a little bit of monetization there because we need to make a living too. And especially, of course, people who bother to join live. That's what it's all about. Every weekday morning, just after 9 o'clock, we get together and we talk about, it's been a busy week this week. My guest today, we've been having Virtual Village Wednesdays with founder and CEO of OurNet. And I haven't managed to make the contact with him this morning, with Michael Brody. Some of you may have joined the network, the OurNet, which is the community-focused social platform. You might have already done that. But if you've got any feedback for Mike, and I can pass that on to him, please pass that on. But we'll stay with the theme that I was going to consider with Mike, which is the year is 2070. And that's the question. Before we look at news and weather this morning, I will give you a few pointers about what would they be called? Scientists, social anthropologists, sociologists, pundits, futurists. Some people have made some predictions about what life might be like in 2070. But I'd like to hear what you'd like it to be like in 50 years from now. I suppose I'm all about time at the moment because it was my birthday yesterday. Thank you to everybody who sent me birthday wishes. And and to those of you who dug into your pockets and bought us a few seeds as well, as Gary suggested. Cheers, Gary. Appreciate that call to action there. Actually, what I'll do is I'll show you where we're at the moment. This is this is my vision for the Good Morning Portugal live stream. I'm not sponsored by the Portuguese or British government at this stage. And the idea is like a crowdfunded thing. In case you wondered, we're a crowdfunded thing. And what I want to do is have a homestead-based livelihood. This is what my money's on for 2070 is. I think there'll be more homesteading, but more about that later. And I'd love to, through my endeavors with the Good Morning Portugal show, manage to crowdfund enough money to eke out a simple living. But the great news is of our first goal of 999 euros, which is my monthly target, actually. And I just made that a bit of an experiment for the first one. We're 34% there since we started. So thanks to each and every one of you who kindly has donated and supported in that way. And it's not just, I don't think it's just, obviously it is just us in this sense, but I think this whole crowdfunding thing and how we make a livelihood in the future will be very important. And I think, we come round to this way of thinking slowly but surely, haven't we? That a little bit from a lot of people is a different business model to expecting, an employer or the government to cough up a whopping salary for all of your working life. And then, do you remember full salary pensions? Do you think anyone will ever get one of those again in the future? Seems a bit unlikely, doesn't it? But anyway, yeah, very pleased with that. And thanks to all who understand that model and who do support us. Really grateful to you. And economics, how we structure our lives, how we make our livelihoods, certainly a subject to talk about for what it might be like in 2070. Let's say a few hellos before we do the weather. Bom dia, I'm up. Glad to hear it. Ana Lucia, how are you today? Tudo bem? Bom dia from Fundão, from Joseph Marsh. Sunny there. The emoticon weather report is awesome, isn't it? That's all we need. We've got what we need within our keyboard of emoticons. I'm loving that, Joseph. You might set a precedent there. As people say hi, you could also put in the weather for your locality in emoticon form. Bom dia, todos, from Gary. Good morning to you, Gary. Lovely to get your pictures in the Happy Homesteaders group of your morning constitutional as you walk around your plot and look for new growth there and appreciate the start of the day. It sounds like a lovely ritual. Bom dia, cá, tudo bem? Tudo bem? Consigo. FD Devane, to you there in Lisboa. Bon dia, Carl, from Cloudy this morning, Villanova de Millefranche. You lucky, lucky people being in Villanova de Millefranche. I suspect it will warm up and clear up there. And you're creeping up the west coast. Are you going to move over a little bit to the Route 66 N2 that we were talking about yesterday, Claire and Steve? Or are you sticking to the coastal road? It's not that easy in some parts, is it, to stay entirely on a coastal trajectory? But thank you for checking in this morning from Villanova de Millefranche, a highly regarded place. Hello, wave there from Julie from Scorching Fundal. I absolutely loved your pictures from Saturday night's wine club, Julie, of your rosé held up against a beautiful sky, a sunset over there in Fundal. So thank you, and keep those coming. And yeah, you would have seen, if you were early this morning, the picture from the studio window. Please keep your early morning pictures coming too. The bon dia picture, basically, from your point of view each morning, will be lovely to see. I mean, assuming it is picturesque, not just like your dressing gown hung up on the back of the bedroom wall or whatever else goes on in your bedroom of a morning. Not terribly interested in that, no offense, but the view from your window of beautiful Portugal will be fantastic. We'd love to immortalize that here on the Good Morning Portugal live stream. So do send that in. And a name that we see from time to time popping in, Rod Skeek. Bon dia, Carl, from Rod. Good morning to you, mate. Lovely to hear from you. And as you know, our door is always open to you, Rod, whenever you fancy checking in. And I think, as you can see there, Rod will be a great guy to have on our phone in. Strong in opinion, I think, is a fair way to describe you, Rod, isn't it? Firm but fair in your opinions. The GMP phone-in starts this Friday, 10th of July. Number to call is scrolling there. So if you were wondering about how to get something off your chest, here's your chance. I mean, it'd be great if it's about life in Portugal. Obviously, I want it to be relevant, I want it to be respectful, and I want it to be legal. That's about it, really. You know, come discuss, say what you have to say. I know that, I mean, this is part of Portuguese culture to me. I think Portuguese people are quite direct and assertive, which I've observed in these last nearly 3 years, is that, respectful, polite, and clear about opinions. And I would love to adopt that as the spirit of the phone-in, which will be starting on Friday. But today, we're looking forward to the future after news and weather. What would you like life to be like? I mean, having the pandemic effect, disaster you could call it, affect our lives so drastically in these last few months. It's a good time to not only, obviously, you have to knuckle down and deal with the present, you know, and all of the fallout and so on, and the very pressing issues of the moment. But, you know, we also need to be thinking, especially us elders. You know, it was my birthday yesterday. I was told that I was an adult. I was even told I was an elder. And us elders need to be thinking about the future, don't we? Some, you know, Native American elders were planning 7 generations. That's how they lived their lives. They planned for 7 generations in the future. And, you know, what would that look like if we did that? Quite extraordinary to have that long-term planning. We don't have that in our culture, do we? We're lucky if we're planning, you know, to the next paycheck in our culture. And on the matter of birthday presents and so on, what did I get yesterday? I got a bottle of port. So this tells you about my age, isn't it? A bottle of port and a pot of honey, which is an interesting mix. It's almost like a remedy, isn't it? Port and honey for an old giffer who's feeling a bit under the weather. I also thought I got pizza from our local cafe, takeaway pizza. They do a really incredible heavy pizza. You know, it's a proper professional job, not some frozen thing that you make at home in the oven, for example. Although we do make our homemade pizza with sourdough base, I can assure you, and I'm sure we'll be using our own tomato sauce in time to come with a tomato glut. But the pizza from the Dom Joao, I thought that's a bit of a crunchy bit in there. That's not like them to be so coarse in their cuisine. It's one of my teeth. And sorry if I've made you cough up your own breakfast there, but I was eating one of my own teeth. So crumbly teeth at the age of 55. Very British teeth I've got, as you can see here. So that was one of my birthday presents, was a part of my own tooth, a gift to myself. And the mosquitoes were very giving as well yesterday. So they've left me with a few prezzies too. Isn't it funny? What happens with the process of aging never comes alone, I've been told all my life, and I'm beginning to see evidence of that now. Dave and Debbie Yanel, if I pronounce that correctly. Bon dia, cold, wet and miserable in Kent. You've had some good weather in Kent. My in-laws are in Kent. Shout out to Alan D. And my father-in-law's definitely been gloating about some of the good weather you've been having from Kent. So it's turned, has it, Dave and Debbie over there in the Garden of England? That's where Mrs. M comes from, actually. She comes from where does she come from? Near Rochester. I forget the name of it now. Rainham. This is where Mrs. M comes from. So yes, shout out to all the Kent people. And maybe a weekly question and answer section on construction and renovation. What do you think? Says Rod Skeet from Build Safe Builders. Oh, come on, Rod. No one's interested in building here, are they? Only joking. That would be awesome. I imagine damp might figure on there. Negotiating with local builders will be a question, I think, too. So, yeah, very, very interesting. And yes, I think that we must have Q&A around construction and renovation as happy homesteaders and explorers and dreamers and expats and so on coming to Portugal. Great idea, Rod. Thank you very much. I mean, certainly that would be a great phone-in to have. And as I say there, the phone-in starts on Friday. So let's have a quick look at a bit of weather first, because there is rain on the way, folks, I have to tell you. And at this point, you're probably quite glad of that. Porto will be getting some rain at the weekend, I'm told, reliably informed. 17 degrees currently in Porto, 22 the high today, 3 sunny days, and then a bit of rain on Saturday. Still 28 degrees, however. And in Lisbon, no rain forecast there, but windy. A little bit windy, a little bit wind coming off the sea. Still 29 degrees next Tuesday when the wind is expected, but good temperatures. Nothing. Oh, yes, in the 30s, reaching the 30s again by next Monday, but a week of high 20s in the capital. Coimbra, there is some rain coming Saturday too. 35 degrees, though. That's going to be balmy and lovely. A little bit of a naked rain dance possibly on the cards for Coimbra. 29 the high today there, 31 tomorrow, 32, then rising to 35 with a bit of rain on Saturday. Faro, 29 degrees the high today. We're getting towards some higher temperatures in Faro finally. 26 tomorrow, 28, 26 and 30 by Monday and Tuesday of next week. So there's your weather. I want to share with you now a little bit of here we go. This is sounds good, says Rod. Sounds good, says Ty to Rod about the Q&A about renovation and construction. We must get together to chat about this. I am heading towards your beautiful town on the weekend of the 18th, Rod. So that might be a chance for us to have a little cheeky cerveja and talk about that. Great. I love it when a plan comes together. We didn't need much encouragement, did we? Okay, this news story item. Sorry, must stop saying story. Talking about the Brussels bazooka. You Eurosceptics will have pricked up your ears at the idea of a Brussels bazooka, and that flag will have struck terror in your hearts. Portugal pushes for Brussels bazooka as MEPs warn it may not get here before 2022. Not exactly the cavalry, is it? Aid promised, but by 2022. Come on, I know we're talking about 2070 today, but you know, if emergency financial and economic help is required, you'd think, wouldn't you, a 2-year lead time might be not very helpful, may I put it like that. Portugal is ramping up the pressure on Brussels to come to a decision on the Bazooka Recovery Fund. I don't know how it got to be called that. I understand why, but I don't know, where that came from. If a bazooka is the same in both English and Portuguese, designed to help countries overcome the economic effects of the pandemic. On Monday, Prime Minister Antonio Costa met with Spanish counterpart Pedro Sanchez in Lisbon, ostensibly to coordinate the southern country's position ahead of a key summit of the European Council next week. So they're lining up the southern countries. And this is an interesting thing. I was never really very aware of this northern countries, southern countries thing in Europe. I mean, I kind of knew, instinctively, I knew exactly what people were talking about when it was expressed so openly as this. But they're also called the frugals, the northern countries, the ones who lecture the southern countries about how well they manage money and so on and their societies. It's a kind of north-south divide of the European continent, isn't it? Sanchez said at the meeting, there is an ensuing joint press conference. Thanks to Natasha Don from the Portugal resident for this piece. It's crucial that all EU leaders recognise that the month of July has to be the month we get an agreement. So they're just sort of chipping away and making their point heard from the press conference there towards the mandarins of the EU. Today, Tuesday, Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte arrived in Lisbon, so it's from yesterday, for talks with Mr. Costa, says Associated Press. Tomorrow he'll be in Madrid. I guess that's Mr. Costa is heading to Madrid. Southern European countries are mounting a show of strength, explains the news agency, as negotiations over how much money they get from the EU and in what form comes to a crunch. I mean, what form would money come in? Oh, I see. I suppose the spending conditions, rather than whether it comes in brown envelopes in a bin in the park, or Bitcoin or something like that. With all the focus on the pandemic, very little has been said recently about this subject, which is so crucial for so many struggling countries. It's so true. And I've said this all along. You know, the suffering of this kind of economic is very personal and private. You know, it makes the news eventually, and it gets talked about as abstracted statistics. But you know, I'm getting, you know, from just a talk when we went out for a drink for my birthday last night, getting a sense that in my little town here, at the lowest, poorest end of things, people are really struggling. You know, people are stealing vegetables in our town, which just, you know, makes it sound like a little sort of, you know, trivial and stuff. But obviously, if you get to a point where you're nicking vegetables, you're hungry, aren't you? And I think this is what's going on. And we, you know, it's all very well for these politicians to be talking at this level, but we got to do some stuff, folks, locally. And this fits into the scope of our, you know, what's life going to be like 50 years from now. Let's get out of these boom and bust cycles, because we can feed the whole planet. We just haven't figured out how to distribute the stuff. It's just, anyway. Calma, Carl, tranquillo. Come back to that in a minute. The crunch aspect is the fact that the northern frugals are still balking at the prospect of handing over wads of cash without any need for repayment. I could say so much about that, but I won't. If Espresso has its figures right, an envelope close to, back to brown envelopes, an envelope close to 35.8 billion euros for Portugal just in subsidies is on the table. This works out, you know, close to 3,500 per Portuguese citizen. The total is an increase in the order of 60% of what the Portuguese receive today in the form of the Portugal 2020 program. Let me read that again. The total is an increase in the order of 60%. Okay, 60% more. But that's only if the Franco-German proposal for the recovery fund is successful. And that's a big if. But with all the millions and billions sloshing about, there is another issue, timing. Espresso stressed over the weekend that Euro MPs have warned of a delay in the arrival of the recovery fund. I mean, what's the big deal here? You know, money is made up, right? Someone types something into a computer. You know what it's like when you get a loan? You know, you don't leave the bank with a suitcase, do you? Unless you're really stylish. But you don't leave the bank with a suitcase of cash. Somebody, you know, with the whole kind of, you know, how the technology of banking works, makes it up. You get agreed to be someone who might pay it back. They press a button and it appears magically in your account. That takes seconds, doesn't it? And here the EU are saying, well, it might take till 2020 to give you some rescue cash here. And the fact that it's made up anyway. Okay. Let's just focus. In a story headline, millions may only arrive in 2022. The paper stresses PSMEPs are also working from their end to try and accelerate the process. Margarida Marques told the paper that 2022 is simply much too late. Of course it is for some people. For the because it's got to come to the government first and then be redistributed, which is another delay. For the recovery fund to be relevant, the millions have to come through next year. PM Costa also stated the obvious at Monday's press conference, saying the consequences of COVID-19 have been devastating for EU economies. Devastating consequences require prompt response. Thus, the pressure building in the hope the frugals laments. About money they would like to see paid back are drowned out. The frugals. But all of this is dependent on final decisions and the fact that the frugals may well query why the Franco-German proposal puts both France and Germany in such enviable positions. In absolute terms, France in fourth position is set to receive 54.2 billion, Germany in slot 6, 44.7 billion. So they're still doing all right whilst lecturing the southern states of Europe. I'll stop there and see what you have to say about that. We're still talking about the construction Q&A while I've been banging on there. How to sort out damp in these houses, says Ty. Okay now, but dreading winter again. Yeah, yes, in a similar condition here, Ty. But Rod, I do know from my conversations already with Rod that Rod is ahead of the game with how to deal with damp. This man seriously knows a thing or two about This is his offer. He does know a thing or two about construction and renovation. He knows a load about construction and renovation. He is the man to speak to, absolutely. Okay, then, let's move to the meat and gravy of the, and if you're a vegan, obviously the nut cutlet of the discussion today. The year is 2070, 50 years from now, right? And I want to share with you what some people have been projecting, suggesting that will happen in 50 years' time. Bear in mind that I said the Native Americans plan 7 generations ahead. That's unimaginable to us now, isn't it? That we would think about not only our children and their children and even the great-grandchildren, but like 4 more generations beyond that. And I think some of us who've come to Portugal are thinking like we've done this for our kids and our grandkids to give them, you know, a nicer quality of life than the one that would have ordinarily happened if we'd stayed in our countries of origin. Is it fair to say that? Excuse me, I'm just going to have a quick sip of water. Some of you might be guessing that I'm a little bit hungover from my birthday celebrations last night. It's a fair guess. Okay, so 2070, and we're not planning ahead like Native Americans are we? We're planning ahead like I was going to say victims, not victims, but like participants in the capitalistic system, which makes you very short term, right? It has to be said. And the EU is democratically run? I think not. Gary, chuck that in there. Quick political grenade in and then run. But, you know, this is what the phone-in's about. We will have these discussions about, I'm sure the EU, Brexit will all come into it. Politics, corruption, everything will come into it on the phone-in. Looking forward to that starting on Friday. Carl McAdam, maybe we and the American Indians are planning for their own reincarnations. Oh, I like that. There's a twist. There's a twist in the thought process here. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. So 7 generations from now, if you did believe in reincarnation, you might be planning for your own return, mightn't you? Yeah, depending on, of course, the lead time of reincarnation. Is it an immediate thing, or do you hang about somewhere for a little while, waiting for your moment, for your soul to say, okay, this is it, I'm needed on planet Earth again, boom, let's go. Or I didn't try that experience last time, I fancy that, I'll give it a go. Fantastic. Thank you, Carl. Okay, Wikipedia, always a reliable source for me. Say what you like, I love Wikipedia. The 2070s, this is very quaint how they're describing this. So I'm just giving you these now, some suggestions and ideas that other people have come up with. Was it Busted who came up with that song, The Year 3000? They were right. Those little prophetic fellows. Prophetic, I said. 2070 is a decade of the Gregorian calendar. Just to remind you, that's the calendar we're using, that will begin on January the 1st, 2070, and will end on December the 31st, 2079. I think we knew that. Things included here are notable predictions by world organizations, figures of ideal goals set, and scheduled events as of the present year. As a caveat, there is no way for sure to predict any given event, as up-to-date information frequently changes. Oh, bless them that they had to say that. This prediction business can be quite unstable. There are ongoing future studies that seek to understand what is likely to continue and what could plausibly change. Predictions for apocalyptic events and the second coming of Christ are discussed elsewhere. Not in this particular entry to Wikipedia. That's great. The teenage message, which is some sort of message sent out into space. I think we're going to hear back from that as one of the prophecies in 2070s, as in the active SETI, the attempt to send messages to intelligent extraterrestrial life. Active SETI messages are usually sent in the form of radio signals. This show is actually a set of messages sent out not only to you guys but to intelligent extraterrestrial life, any extraterrestrial life. They're usually sent out in radio signals. It says physical messages like that of the Pioneer plaque may also be considered an active SETI message. So the prediction is the messages sent in 2001 from the 70-meter Eupatoria planetary radar arrives at its destination. Took 70 years to get there. The star HD 197076, the romantically named star HD 197076. You might have looked at this in the night sky and not even known it was called that. The SETI message and the teenage message have been received by that planet, and we will find out if a message comes back, which of course might take another 70 years. There's another one that you might be interested in. The Pew Research Center predicts that Islam could surpass Christianity as the world's largest religion by this time. I wouldn't have thought it would have taken that long with the decline of Christianity and the uptake of the Islamic religion around the world. In 2073, in the United States, works will enter the public domain each year once the work's creator has died 70 years prior. So basically, after 70 years, you do not have a copyright anymore. Get this, 2075, the ozone layer is expected to have fully recovered. 2076, the planetoid 9377 Sedna is expected to reach its perihelion. I bet you're glad you tuned in for that. 2079, August 11th, Mercury occults Mars, the first since at least 1708. I must ask Mrs. M what she thinks of that. A few more predictions for you. This is what I'm trying to get you to think about, what life might be like in 50 years from now in Portugal and the world, of course. You know, what would you like to see? Some of us, it has to be said, that's a sobering thought, I know, but some of us will just be thinking legacy here, and we might not be around in 50 years' time. You know, you have to get to grips with that fact. And just enjoy our lives to the best until such time comes. But some of us might. I mean, if progresses in health technology might mean I do make it to 100 and, but what, 50 years from 105. And if I'm middle-aged, I might make it to 110, you know? So we'll see. From another site, futurebase.com, timeline 2070. Cities, this is where, is it busted? We're right about the year 3000. Cities are being constructed under the sea, 2070. Global temperatures have risen by 4 degrees Celsius. You will be able to grow bananas in Portugal. I shouldn't laugh. Fusion energy power plants are in use by developed countries, which is an interesting description there, isn't it? I mean, undeveloped countries might also be messing around with fusion energy. Who knows? That's a scary thought. Or is fusion energy all good? Fusion energy power plants are in use by developed countries. A few more before we go to yours. Have we got any yet predictions? No. Are you just completely bored by the subject here? Which is fair enough. I do encourage radical honesty. Or are you just thinking, oh my goodness, Muntz has got us thinking this morning. 50 years from now, I can barely think till the end of the week, let alone 50 years from now. Your predictions, please, folks, about how you would like life to be like, the world you want your children and grandchildren at least to move into. On futuretimeline.net, the 21st century /2070 to 2079, this decade that's in consideration here. They too say that Islam is the world's dominant religion. Global average temperatures, this is as the decade arrives, they're saying this. Global average temperatures have risen by 4 degrees. Interesting. Fusion power is widespread. Fully automated homes. Now, if you thought your whatever Amazon Alexa dot thing was the beginning of something, that would appear to be true from this prediction. Fully automated homes. Siri, could you grab me a beer from the fridge, please? That sort of thing. 5-year survival rates for liver cancer are approaching 100%. Excellent. Advanced nanotech clothing. I don't know what that means, but I wonder if that's part of being in a fully automated home, that your nanotech clothing can take you to the toilet when you need to go, or change, for some of us, change your nappies. Pico technology is becoming practical. I don't know what that means either, but I'm guessing it's the development beyond nanotechnology. Pico technology would be the things that could probably disappear inside your body to take a look. I mean, nanotechnology is terrifying enough, isn't it? And mini drones and stuff. But Pico technology, it should be here, they say, or it should be becoming practical by 2072. 2073, plastic recycling rates are approaching 100% worldwide. The number of trillionaires in the world now exceeds 10. What are they doing with their wealth? And has the battle of the billionaires given way to the triumph of the trillionaires? And they exceeds 10 people. And is that the way this is going? So like even fewer people have most of the money. The first space elevator is becoming operational. Wow. Okay. I mean, that's I don't imagine it's like Roald Dahl sort of stuff, is it? Great glass elevators. I don't know. 2075 to 2080, the first space elevator is becoming operational. This is the sort of thing the Branson dreams are made of, right? But obviously, if he doesn't get his bailout, he won't be doing it. The distribution of birds in the United States has been altered substantially. They don't say how. 2075, the Thames barrier is upgraded. We know what that means, don't we? Like stick a few more meters on top of it. And maybe move out of London. 2076, accurate simulation of viruses. Oh dear. Well, that'll be an improvement. Accurate simulation of viruses, depending on which conspiracy theorist you speak to. Unmanned probes to Sedna. Wow. Who doesn't like an unmanned probe? 2078, the world's electricity has been fully decarbonized. About flipping time, 2078. Advances in space travel and tourism. Asbestos production is ending globally. It's going to take 59 years for that to happen. We could total solar eclipse in New York. Talk about apocalyptic. And finally, SQL server databases are hit by a major glitch. The stuff of science fiction nightmares detailed in a few places there. Not much on the upside, it has to be said, really. What do you think? There we go. A few suggestions coming in now. Neil Perkins. Good morning to you, Neil. Are taxes going to increase to... Oh, no, this isn't. Oh, this is a prediction, isn't it? And I think this is a safe prediction over the next 50 years, Neil, that yes, taxes will increase. Did they ever go down? I mean, they do change a little bit, but I don't think the trend is towards zero taxation as we know it and raising community money by some other means. Are taxes going to increase to cover the cost? You bet they are. To cover the cost of debt to the countries severely financially affected by COVID-19. If you're asking me, of course, when would a government operating in the current style of government, when would they ever miss the opportunity or think anything of raising taxes to cover public debt? I mean, you know, it gets garnered on your behalf and paid for by you. Isn't that how we roll at the moment? I don't think it's the best system, but that is certainly how we roll, right? A lot to decide before we do the N2, but we're considering it. Watch this space. Neil, you might know parts of the Route 66 of Portugal as someone who knows the Alentejo well. Yeah, watch this space. Stephen giving official title there. Steve and Claire. Yes. I think you've got to do it. Route 66, absolutely fabulous. Obviously known in Portugal as the N2. Rod, more than happy to chat about this subject. I'm guessing that's all of them, Rod, because we do like to have a chat, me and you. But this is, I think he's referring back to the damp in these houses. Okay now, but dreading winter again. Not just you. I think that's a general sort of Portuguese cultural thing because there are such extremes of temperature here that we're not used to, right? You know, the bandwidth of temperature in the UK, where I'm from, for example, you can pretty much get your head around how to prepare for summer and winter. But when you're going up into the 40s in the summer and down to around 0 or below, that's a lot of bandwidth to take care of, although I'm sure Rod will have a really good solution to that. I believe they are talking about easy finance terms at petrol stations soon to enable you to fill up. And yes, Rod we've got a few threads on the go here. Damp problems in Portuguese properties. Yeah, absolutely, Rod. Welcome to talk about that anytime. Come in and talk. You and me could play out little scenes from Rising Damp, couldn't we? Who's going to be Leonard Rossiter? I believe they are talking about easy finance terms at petrol stations soon to enable you to fill up. This is what I suspect you believe might be coming, Neil. You know, who pays for the bailouts? The taxpayers do. Unless we figure out something else, unless we realize that money is all made up, and we, you know, explore things like universal basic income, you know, crowdfunding models, redistribution of wealth in a different way. Government is very expensive, is it not? A lot of the bailing out and the bureaucracy of managing the public purse and how money gets spent and how people get helped, that in itself is a very expensive and costly process. For me, I think Portugal has the most amazing local government systems and potential. And, you know, I was talking to someone last night, you know, a lot of the regulations, the COVID regulations and responses don't make much sense on a local level. People in Lisbon, whose lifestyles are in Lisbon, make those sort of decisions in the capital, and capitals all over the world. They live very urban lifestyles. They have a particular worldview. They deal with numbers. And I think there should be guidelines which the people, the elders, the locals of localities of communities interpret based on their knowledge of their locality. And I think the same should be true of economics as well. It's 2070 and American scholars are still trying to make sense of Donald Trump's tweets. You do not know how much of a temptation there is for me to do my Donald Trump impersonation right now. I did respond to one of his Trumps the other day when he was talking about China. China has done so much damage, he said in one of his tweets. And I responded with, Yes, but it's arguably still better than single-use polystyrene cutlery and plates. He hasn't responded to me so far, but he's more outward than inward, isn't he? Let's face it. And it's 2070, says Ty, and Putin is still president. Is this a kind of gallows humor about the future of the world? Fantastic. Really love that. Okay, going to wrap up now. We can continue this conversation, of course, on the Good Morning Portugal page, in the Happy Homesteaders group, on the phone in on Friday. Tomorrow, very interesting guest tomorrow. Vaughan Willman will be joining me tomorrow. Let me just make sure I have got his name right. This is Vaughan who's joining me tomorrow about Michael Brodie. He has had a senior moment this morning. I'm looking forward to more of those. He'll join us on another Wednesday. No problem with that. Michael will join you another time. Vaughan Wilmore will be joining me tomorrow to talk about policing in the Algarve. I saw an article that he'd written about it. I'm fascinated by policing, I have to say. It's a very tough job to do. Who would want to do that in their right mind, to be a police officer? It takes all sorts, and they, on the one hand, they're doing the job as social workers, and on the next day or the same afternoon, dressing up as a riot cop, possibly, or attending to the most horrific things in society. The people we turn to one minute, and the people who we want to, or some of us want to defund the next. And Neil Perkins, I think, general laughter about Trump and Putin. And of course, the prediction about how many trillionaires there are in 2070, it may well be those two, right, who are in that top 10 of trillionaires. So join me tomorrow for my chat with Vaughan Wilmore about policing in the Algarve. He has been in the business of training the police, I believe in the UK. So that'll be interesting as well. How do police get trained for their work that they have to do, the difficult work they have to do, and specifically his experiences of interviewing the police in the Algarve and the fascinating job they have to do. Can you imagine being in the police in the Algarve, especially now? I mean, I'm sure it was a complex job already, but now with the COVID and tourism kind of in the Algarve, what's that job like now? We'll find out tomorrow with Vaughan. And of course on Friday, the 10th of July, this coming Friday, number to call 351 if you're outside of Portugal. And I do welcome calls from outside of Portugal. 913-590-303, the number to call. Come on, join me on the screen to chat, or call in on that phone number and talk about anything you like, relevant to life in Portugal, respectful in your discourse, and legal, of course, because we don't want to be getting yourself into any trouble now you've come to live in this lovely country. So, see you then. Ate amanhã. Take care and ciao for now. Thank you for all your hilarious contributions this morning.